to talk about a couple things before Dr. Kieschnick gets here, and then we'll get on with his thing. But I just wanted to mention this. So tomorrow morning is the memorial service for Pastor Leo, dear friend, pastor, mentor to many of us. Some of you know that I carry around a Bible case that actually carries 2 Bibles in it. You know, I have my regular English one with my completely unreadable New American Standard Bible. The other thing I carry is the Reader's Greek New Testament, which Pastor Leo gave to me several years ago. And I carry it all the time. If I'm not looking up the Greek on my phone, I'm looking it up in this. And so, he was a friend, he was a mentor, he was a member of our Tuesday morning men's Bible study, and probably wins the award for drollest sense of humor. It was, he was just such a joy and such an encourager to me as a Bible study leader and things like that. But just a great brother in Christ. And so I know this looks like it's beat to death, and it's because I've used it a lot. And I have other Greek New Testaments, but none that was really suitable for just carrying along with my English, so I could have it ready and just all set to go whenever I need it. So that's a little piece of Pastor Leo I'm going to carry around all the time. So for those who can join tomorrow, I'm going to be at the service tomorrow morning, and hope to see a lot of folks there to celebrate his life and all the things that the Lord did through him. I posted online a story from the Chronicle back in 1973 about Pastor Leo, if you might have seen it, because he had a bit of a reputation for his venue of choice, right? And he talked about this even in the later years, that he often found that people were more willing to open up and talk, not so much in his office, not that he was unwilling to visit people in his office, but he went to local restaurants and bars and hung out and met people there. And they actually had a write-up in the Chronicle about him. And so I found a clipping of that and a picture from that article and posted that on a couple of different places, including Facebook. So if you're friends with me there, you might see that. But it's a great reminiscence of the legacy of Pastor Leo Simenk, our first pastor here at Gloria Day, and a great friend to many of us, even in his later years. We rejoice at the blessing God put in our lives with that man. So, Dr. Kieschnick, welcome. Good to see you here. So, without further ado, I'm going to let this gentleman get his time with us this morning, and I'm going to get my stuff out of your way.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to introduce one of my heroes who is here today.
Wow.
Pastoral Leadership Institute got started a bunch of years ago. And one of the people, I'll hold this one until a few minutes from now. But don't let me forget to introduce this man to you. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I've been at Gloria Day many times during the past 40 years in one capacity or another. But it's always good to be in this beautiful church with beautiful people. Do you know this church is known around the nation? This church has a reputation around the nation. And part of it is because of the people who have been blessed to serve as your pastor and your leader over the years. Leo Simenk was one of them. John Kieschnick was another one. He's the guy I'm going to introduce here in just a minute. So how do I advance these slides? Do I do that myself, or do you do that? Right there? Which button do I press?
I think it shouldn't happen.
There we go. So I put this picture up there just to say a few words about myself, but some people don't know who I am. They say, who's this guy and why is he here? So over the years, the Lord has put me in a whole bunch of different positions. I first got into church work as a 4th grade teacher at St. Paul Lutheran School in Austin, Texas, with a degree in animal science from Texas A&M. Long story short, I was in vet school, failed embryology, graduated with a degree in animal science because it was handy, and felt the Lord tugging me to do something other than be a veterinarian. So I had an opportunity to teach the 4th grade. There was a student in my 4th grade class who had an elder sister who has been my wife now for almost 60 years.
Wow.
We'll celebrate 60 years in about a week. And she's put up with a lot. So, I don't know, when I asked her to be my wife, I said, this is a 2-shot deal. Will you marry me and will you go with me to the seminary? Springfield, Illinois. And she's often said, I wonder what you would have said if I had said yes to the first and no to the second one. I said, well, sweetie, I always kind of know what the answer is going to be before I ask a question, because I don't want to end up being told no for a deal like that. So we served a couple parishes. The first one was in Biloxi, Mississippi. The next one was in Beaumont, Texas. And the third one was a new mission plant in Georgetown, Texas, which is where we live now. And there are lots of stories to tell. You all have stories as well. But along the line, I was elected district president. Can you believe that? I can't.
I can.
I really can't.
I voted for Dean Wenthy.
Yeah, of course you did.
Sorry.
That was for the Synod President. And I was elected national president as well. Can you believe that?
Yes. Yep.
I can't believe that.
I can.
It's been an incredible, incredible ride. And I say this with deep and true humility, that it's always a privilege and a pleasure to serve. It's also a burden to serve because of the responsibility that any pastor has. Every pastor has a lot of responsibility, way beyond the awareness of most people. And an ecclesiastical leader is just a whole different kind of responsibility. Responsible for a lot of pastors and spouses and teachers and congregations, and national president and responsible for a lot of institutions and organizations, and it's a wide variety, a vast variety. It's a great church body which has its challenges. So in 2010, I was unelected from that office, which was a difficult time. It really was a difficult time. We came back to Austin, in Austin area, Georgetown, where our kids live, and I went to work for Concordia University for a few years. And then I had an opportunity to go back and do something that I had done before district presidency, and that was what I just retired from. That's the Lutheran Foundation of Texas, now called Legacy Deo. And it was basically talking to people about their resources and what they're going to do with those resources to support their family and also to support the charities that they know and love. So I did that for 9 years and retired on September 7th of this year, last year. 2025, a few months ago, September 7th. And on October 1, I got a phone call from a guy that I knew a little bit, and he said, we think you need to come work at Pastoral Leadership Institute. And I said, really? I've only been retired for 23 days. So I did, started October 1, and I want to tell the story of PLI, because I was an early PLI supporter. So Pastoral Leadership Institute first began with this little logo, this slogan, 8 men and a brochure. The deal was, like Pastor Gerald Kieschnick, he was pastor of this congregation, and nobody taught him how to be the pastor of a large church. And he wasn't the only guy. There were 7 other guys. Next slide, please, sir. These are the guys who first kind of were known as the 8 men who had, I don't know if they really had a brochure, but that's what they called us, the 8 men in a brochure. So Mike Ernst was from Hales Corners, Wisconsin. Vern Gunneman, Kirkwood, that's a suburb of St. Louis. Steve Hauer, Ellisville, St. Louis. John Kieschnick, you know that man? He's sitting right there. Let's give that man a hand. What an icon that guy is. Norbert Esch from Orange, California, Greg Smith from St. Louis suburb, Bill Thompson, San Antonio, and Steve Wagner from Carrollton. Those were the 8 men. 3 of them were pastors in Texas when I was district president back in the mid-90s. And we started talking about what they were thinking about doing with this brochure and these 8 men. And I'm not sure who asked the question first, but I said, I think if you really want to do this in a way that gets some national coverage, we need to get the district presidents involved. There are 35 district presidents. I was one of 35. And I said, how about if somebody from PLI comes to a meeting of our council presidents, maybe buys lunch, and then talks about PLI and develops a relationship and see if people will catch the vision and get behind it and support it. And sure enough, it did. Caught fire. Almost all of the 35 district presidents, there were a couple of holdouts, but almost all of the district presidents said, we want that for our pastors. So the first plan was to find pastors who have the capacity of learning how to be pastor of a large church. You think, well, don't these guys go to seminary? What in the world do they learn? Well, they don't learn how to be pastors of a large church. That's for sure. Because most of our churches in our church body are not large. Most of them are pretty small. A whole lot smaller now than they were back 30 years ago. So the system of Pastoral Leadership Institute, the plan was to develop a series of seminars, workshops, groups of people, getting groups together in cohorts, and early on they said we need to involve the spouses of these men as well. That was unique because in most cases pastors went to conferences all the time, but rarely was there anything really substantive for the pastors' wives. But PLI embedded that in the DNA of their ministry. It was basically a 4-year program in cohorts of about 5 couples. And they met together and did some work together and visited large congregations together and did mission trips together. You talk about some bonding that occurred among those 10 people. And to this day, pastors and their wives who went through Pastoral Leadership Institute still have that kind of strong, healthy relationship. Well, Gerald Kieschnick was one of the founders, obviously, of Pastoral Leadership Institute and has influenced people literally around the world, not just around our state or nation. He's an icon also. He's a humble guy. He's just right now thinking, Jerry, just shut up and get on with the whole curriculum here. But I'm here to tell you that you folks were blessed to be with this man and know him and love him as he knows and loves you and many other people as well. Next slide, please, sir. So, here's a little bit of insight into my heart. In 2010, when I was unelected from the national office, I wondered, here's what my wonderment was. I said, good Lord, I felt called to that office because I was elected 3 times. I was elected. And I felt like that's where you wanted me to be. So when I was unelected, is that you telling me that you really didn't want me to be there in the first place? Or is it you telling me that I wanted you there in the first place, but I don't want you there now? Or did you have nothing to do with it, and it was just political maneuvering on the part of people who did get elected? Help me understand this, Lord. And the Lord wasn't speaking to me in a way that I could understand what he was saying. So I occupied myself productively with Concordia University and with the foundation. I love that work at both of those places. And it wasn't until kind of late in those years that it passed. I've been out of that office now for 15 and a half years. It was just a couple of years ago that I started saying, well, maybe the good Lord has something else in mind for me. So when I got this call from a man named Ben Haupt, H-A-U-P-T, who I knew. I didn't know Ben very well, but I knew him. He is the leader of Pastoral Leadership Institute. And he said, we want you to come to work for us. I said, why? And he gave me a few reasons, a few answers. And I studied and I prayed. And this passage right here is the passage that hit me right between the eyes. It's a passage in the book of Isaiah. Before I was born, the Lord called me from my mother's womb. That's Isaiah talking. Isaiah was trying to figure out something about his life about this time also. He was feeling like he really wasn't accomplishing the stuff of significance that he felt the Lord had in mind for him. So he said, I know that the Lord called me from my mother's womb. And then he skips through a few verses, and then he says this. This is what the Lord says to Isaiah. It is too small a thing for you to restore the tribes of Jacob and Israel that I have kept. So this is God saying, Isaiah, you've been prophesying to the Christians, to the Jewish people, to the good people, to the good folks. But he's saying it's too small a thing. And then he says, I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that my salvation may be brought and reach the ends of the earth. And when I read that passage, I said, is this the reason I was unelected? Because of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is a pretty confined group. It's 6,000 congregations, a whole bunch of pastors and teachers in schools. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has some national, international mission activities, and yet it's still pretty confined. So when I read this passage, and I talked to Ben, I said, tell me more about what PLI is doing now. And he shared with me what I'm fixing to share with you. I said, maybe, just maybe, that's the reason I was unelected, so I could help an organization reach the ends of the earth. It was a spiritual experience, and it still is a spiritual experience for me. Next slide, please. So, what is the PLI curriculum? What does it consist? Well, basically, there are 4 years, like I said, and this is very, very broad-based. Year 1, are we going in the right direction? Am I the kind of leader that people want to follow? So these are pastors who know that there's more to it. It's too small a thing just to take care of this little flock. As important as that is, we're here to help those people, like you heard this morning if you're in church, help those people reach out to other people with the precious news of Jesus. And a pastor is key in helping his people see that vision. So the pastor asks himself the question, is our church going in the right direction? Am I the kind of leader people want to follow? So it's intended to build the capacity of a pastor to be a humble leader, but nonetheless a courageous leader. Second year, how do we adapt and change to align with God's vision and mission? Because if we've just been inwardly focused as a church all of our existence, and all of a sudden we're being led to look out around the community and the world, how do we adapt to that change without falling apart? Question 3, how do we unite the entire congregation to God's vision and mission? Generally speaking, there are some people who have a mission heart, a mission spirit in every congregation. It's not generally, not always, universally accepted by the congregation. So the question is, do we just have a small group that moves in this direction of outward reach and vision? Or do we try to incorporate the whole church so it is a congregational ministry, not just that of 3 or 4 people? And number 4, how do we multiply new leaders for God's vision and mission? And that's the reason that PLI started in the first place. How do we multiply leaders who are able to lead congregations, not just serve congregations? There's a difference. A lot of pastors meet. Why did I go into the ministry? Because I felt I could serve people. I love people. I love to help people. I love to serve people. There's more to pastoral ministry than simply serving. There's also the motivation, the inspiration, the leadership of helping a congregation be in mission for Jesus, in the community and beyond. Next slide, please, sir. So PLI trains pastors, spouses, and ministry leaders around the world to lead the mission of God. I'm going to share some slides and some pictures. The pictures are true pictures. These are actual pictures of PLI training, and you'll see these first pictures. There's a lot of them that have people that don't look like you and me. Because what's happening now is PLI is international. It started as national, just training LCMS pastors. Now it's international, and there's a huge, huge contingent of people in Africa who have received PLI training. I'll show you some numbers in a minute. So this is one training of people in Africa. Next slide shows a map of the world. The green, that's countries with existing work. PLI has reached those places. The kind of brown color, that's countries with new work and leaders in process. So you'll see that there's a bunch in Africa, there's some in Europe, Canada as well. And the blue countries, look, all the blue ones are in what continent? Africa. Scheduled for new work in 2026. Next slide, please. So 2024, at a glance, in the U.S. and Canada, 411 leaders, that's pastors and their spouses, were trained. In Europe, Asia, and Latin America, 624. Africa, that's a correct number, 16,521 pastors and their spouses trained in Africa. So how do you do that? How do we do that? Here's the deal. When PLI started doing international work, what barrier would you imagine all of a sudden was in the face of the trainers? Language. So the seminar, the workshop, the training was a PLI guy who speaks English talking through a native person who speaks the language of the participants. So that's the way the message was given. It was slow, cumbersome, everything had to be said twice, and not all of the concepts that we have in Christianity are easily translatable to people. So somehow or other, and I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but somebody had the idea, why don't we get a small group of people from that country and let's train them using that multilingual process, and then let's equip them to be the trainers of the people in their own country who speak their own language. That way that language barrier for the people being trained is removed, because they're hearing that training in their own language from people who have been trained by PLI. What the blessing that has come from that is multiplication of the resources, because one PLI trainer or two PLI trainers can train 10 people who speak a different language, and those 10 can train 100. So in addition to the language barrier, there's a cost factor. When pastors in America went through PLI, early on, I'm not sure how it ended up, but it cost $6,000 for each couple to go through that training. And the way it was funded, the pastor and his wife came up with $2,000. The congregation they were serving another $2,000, and the district, in our case Texas, came up with another $2,000. That's where the $6,000 came from. Well, $6,000 is a lot of money. We're able to train pastors around the world now at a fraction of that cost, because when the pastors actually and his spouses come together to be trained, they're coming to a place that's local. They can stay in their own house. They don't have to pay $150 a night for a hotel room and buy meals in restaurants. They eat at home. The churches where they're trained often provide meals during the day when the training is taking place. So the cost for training those people is minimal, and the result is exponential. To train 16,000 pastors with only one or two PLI trainers, that would never have been able to be accomplished in 1 year period. It just simply wouldn't have happened. So, next slide, please. This is the past from 1999 to 2009. Those are the cumulative number of pastors that have been trained. At the end of 2024, we were at 21,000. The goal for 2 years from now is to be at 34,000, and the goal by 2030 is to be 100,000. And is that a number that was just grabbed out of the air? No, it's not. That's a number that's based on people groups and churches who have knocked on the door of PLI saying, would you please bring your training to us? So that's not an unrealistic number. It's a number based on requests that are already on the table. We simply need to have the resources now to make that happen by 2030. So there are 3 phases to what we're trying to do. So people ask when I was standing by the table a while ago in Arthrex, why are you here? What do you want? I said, well, I'm here to tell the story about Pastoral Leadership Institute because it's a very important part of the pastors that have served this congregation. Both Gerald Kieschnick and also Dan Chapman have been trained through PLI, and they are the ones who can give testimony about how important that was in their lives. John just wasn't trained, he was one of the trainers. He was one of the founders of this organization. So I'm here to tell that story and to give thanks to God for the blessing that PLI has been for 30 years in our church body and recently in other church bodies and other people groups around the world. I'll make you a light to the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach the ends of the earth, that Isaiah passage. So, the heart for near, shift the training approach in the U.S. and Canada. With the success of the program that I just described, where PLI trains trainers who train local pastors, the PLI board and staff started saying, you know, that has worked so well in foreign countries. Why don't we use that same model here in America? Because there's a lot of demand for leadership training among pastors and spouses here in America. So just a couple of weeks ago, the first model in America for training using the international model that's been so successful took place out in California. And in the next few years, that is the modality, that's the method that's going to be used by PLI to train pastors and spouses here in America. Train trainers, trainers train their local pastors. I've mentioned the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod a bunch of times. You think all those 16,000 people in Africa that we trained are Lutheran Church Missouri Synod? No, they're not. Now, hear this. That's one of the powerful reasons I came out of retirement 23 days after I retired to do this work. Because we are indeed reaching the ends of the earth, not just through Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, because news flash, not everybody in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod would agree with this, but we are not going to be the only ones in heaven. Can we do something that will help other churches, other denominations, or churches with no denomination? Can we do something to help their ministry become more genuine, more based in Holy Scripture and in the good news of Jesus, the grace of God in Jesus? Can we do that? What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. That is so cool, because we are able to influence people way beyond our own church body by training pastors of other church bodies or no church body. I don't have any passion for this at all. I guess I need to start getting excited, right? And that's one of the things that gets me pumped about where PLI is now and where it's going in the future, because its reach is not just parochial, not just based on one church body and 6,000 congregations that are dying. Many are dying in our church body. So, $4 million over 3 years. What's that $4 million run? What does that do? So here's the deal. 93% of the budget of Pastoral Leadership Institute, 93% comes from contributions from people who hear and see about this ministry and say, and feel called to support in prayer or support with finances. So we've broken down 4 different levels, 4 different approaches, and 4 different objectives, and what we believe is going to cost to fund those aspects of this ministry. So over the next 3 years, $4 million for that purpose, a heart for near. Go ahead. What does that mean? It means that we're going to do what this slide shows right here. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho had a cohort, a training cohort together. That's near. That's America right here, not across the pond. Next slide. We're also going to continue to think far, because we're not going to stop what we're doing internationally in order to focus on America. So it's going to be near and far. And to continue the ministry that we're doing largely, again, in Africa, but other countries as well, meet the current demand for international training. We have right now 4 different groups of trainers And you'll see their pictures here on the slides that come up. Pastor Scott Rischie, R-I-S-C-H-E, and his wife Lori. They have been around PLI for a long time, and they have done the yeoman's job of doing most of the training. Scott and Lori Rischie. Another pastor and his wife, Paul and Beth Schult, S-C-H-U-L-T, one letter short of Schultz. Schultz. Paul is the pastor in Redwood City, California. They work half-time with Pastoral Leadership Institute, and they serve this small church in Redwood City, California. Paul is gradually becoming a little bit more full-time over the next couple of years, because Scott Rischie will be retiring probably in a couple of years. We have also Emmanuel McCullough. He is not an Irish guy. He is an African guy. He lives in Tanzania, he and his wife. Wonderful people, beautiful people. They are doing a lot of that training in Africa. We also have Ronnie Marquardt. I need to get pictures of these people here, don't I? I need to get pictures of them. Ronnie Marquardt and his wife. They live in Portugal now, but they are native Brazilians. So they have opened lots of doors in the Hispanic, the Latin American countries. So those are the 4 groups of people who are the basic trainers. It's a low number of people. Pastoral Leadership Institute has only 5 full-time employees. PLI has no building. It's a virtual ministry. The staff met this past week on Zoom. Everybody knows Zoom, right? It's a wonderful thing. We don't have to pay money for brick and mortar, insurance for a building, maintenance, any of that stuff. We don't have a building. It's just people who are working together. Let's see, 5 full-time and 14 part-time folks. So that's an intent to capture the gifts and abilities of people who feel called to this ministry without the huge financial liability and responsibility to pay a full-time salary and insurance and retirement and all those things that go along with the expenses. So to meet the demand of international training, $4.8 million over the next 3 years. So near, far. These are a picture of some of the far. Jinja, Uganda. You can see over by the screen in the back of that slide, top of the slide, that's Paul and Beth Schult, the trainers there. Next slide. This is one in Monrovia, Liberia. At the front, hard to see here, but that's Lori Rischie, who's training a bunch of women in Liberia. Next slide. Middleburg, South Africa, Lori Rischie again. Now, these are African people, obviously, that are being trained in their home territory. They don't have to come to America to be trained. Next slide. So the third aspect, an overflowing heart, a scale for growth, $2 million in 3 years. The growth, what is the growth? The growth is meeting the needs, being able to respond to the requests for this training in America, which we believe is going to grow exponentially as well, but also around the world, which is already there. Next slide. So this is the overflowing in Ethiopia particularly. Most of those 16,000 people in Africa that were trained were Ethiopians. This is a training being conducted by, I don't even know who that trainer is standing at the front, but he's one of the trainers who was trained by Emmanuel McCullough, our African man. Next slide. And this is overflowing. This is a group of people in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, even the Lutheran church in Ethiopia is just exponentially expanding, growing by leaps and bounds, with very few pastors. Some people say, well, that's the reason they're growing. Well, every group still needs pastoral leadership at one level or another. So Ethiopia is just literally exploding, and there's many more in Ethiopia to be trained yet. Next slide. And here is level 4, a heart for the future, securing generations of leaders for the mission. And that's a ministry leader legacy fund. I mentioned a while ago that I had quite a few years working with planned giving for the Lutheran Foundation of Texas. That's what this is about, because we know that not everybody's in a position to make current gifts, significant gifts to help fund this ministry. Many people are, and they do. Some people say, I can't do that right now. I need to live on the money that the good Lord has given me. Well, fine. Let's make a plan for when the good Lord calls you home. Some of that money will be available and put to use beyond your lifetime for the sake of the kingdom. Pictures, slides. Tanzania, Scott Rishi, he's the white guy up in front by the screen. In Tanzania, that's probably Emmanuel McCullough, the African person on our staff. Next slide. And this is a group that just met last week in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Leadership Collective. And what do you notice about that picture? This is America. You see the multicultural representation there? It's not just white people who are being trained here in America. Terry and I, after we had a church thing, it was a funeral a couple of weeks ago at our church in Walburg. That's John Kieschnick's home church. He was born and raised and baptized there. His daddy was principal there for a long time. So we had to stop at Walmart to pick something up. So Terry stayed in the car. She's recovering from fractured pelvis. So I went in and I came out and I said, Terry, I believe I was one of about 3 Anglos in that store today. Because just looking around, I go to a Walmart, I go to an airport, and you'll see the constituency, the people, the wide variety of people that actually live here in our country. We are more and more nearly becoming a minority. We really are. So training pastors and their spouses here in America doesn't mean just the Anglo-Saxon white people. And that's what you see here that took place in California. There are some African people, there are some Hispanic people. This is another group in California, just because that's where our primary trainer, Scott Rishi, teaches, and he and his wife are fixing to leave to go back to somewhere around the world. They wanted to get a couple of cohorts in while they were still home. Next slide. So here's some partnership opportunities. A Heart for Near, support leaders in the U.S. and Canada who often feel alone. Some statistics, some studies have been done. I think I mentioned this morning in early service. 45% of pastors, Christian pastors in America, at one point or another, think about leaving the ministry. So one of the things that happened, and we have testimony after testimony of people who've gone through Pastoral Leadership Institute, pastors and spouses, who said, I have the good Lord working through Pastoral Leadership Institute to thank for keeping me in the ministry. I was ready to bail out. I was ready to bail, they say. And PLI renewed my strength, my spirit, my commitment, my calling. And spouses of pastors. We have many spouses who have testified that their marriage was in trouble because the pastor was trying to figure out how to be the pastor of a growing church and was in that process neglecting his family, his spouse. And that's another aspect of PLI which is unique in the world of pastoral training. The spouse is an integral part. Spouses participate, active participants, and it's very, very meaningful to them as well as to the pastors. A Heart for Far, equipping leaders across 5 other global regions, expanding gospel outreach. Overflowing Heart, build capacity for rapid growth after meeting initial goals. A Heart for the Future, create a legacy fund through estate planning gifts. So those are the partnership opportunities. What does this mean? This means the Lord, what does this mean? This means that I'm standing before you and I'm sharing with you some stories about a great ministry that's been going on for over 3 decades. And there are people who hear stories like this and messages like this who feel moved in their heart to do something to support. What kind of support? Have you heard of prayer? Prayer changes things. When people pray, The good Lord pays attention. So how much does it cost to be a prayer partner? It doesn't cost anything. So I'm inviting each of you to be a prayer partner for Pastoral Leadership Institute. You have room in your heart for that? Good. Financial partnership. Like I mentioned a while ago, not everybody's in a position or called upon, feels called to support ministries financially. Terry and I, in our latter years especially, have been blessed by supporting multiple ministries. You probably, if you're like our household, we get 3 or 4 requests every day for funding from ministries that we've supported in the past and from ministries that we don't know anything about, have not supported. Do we support all of them? No, we don't. There are some of them that I say, this is a good ministry, but it's not in my heart right now, so I just put that one right here in the circular file, as they call it, in the trash can. Do I feel guilty about it? Not as much as I used to. But what keeps me from that guilt is because I know the Lord has called me to support this ministry and that ministry and a whole handful of ministries in ways that we feel humbly good about doing. I have a cousin who's a very successful entrepreneurial guy in the Austin area. Dick was named the Entrepreneur of the Year of the whole city of Austin. Dick and Sarah give 50% of their annual income to charities. And Dick says, Gary, my net worth keeps growing. My father was a humble meat cutter. He never made it past high school, but he worked hard for a living. He ended up being vice president of Rice Food Markets. You know Rice Food Markets? And Daddy used to say, Jerry, you can't outgive the Lord. His shovel is bigger than yours. And for a long time, I just thought that was a pious statement coming from a father, but I discovered that truth. It really is true. So prayer partnerships and financial partnerships, that's what we're inviting people to do. Next slide, please. Pastor, in the morning service, Pastor Shepman mentioned the QR code 3 times. If you are so moved, feel free to capture that QR code right now on your phone, because it's got a lot of information about PLI and some things that you can do to take next steps to participate as prayer partners or as financial partners, or just the basic information. It takes you to a website which shares lots of stories, lots of pictures about the board of directors, the staff, the ministries that are involved in training. It's a veritable wealth of information about this ministry. The QR code. The first time I saw a QR code, I thought, well, I gotta take a picture of that thing, right? Well, no, you don't have to take a picture of it. It captures, in the camera, it captures the QR code. And through the miracle of technology, it takes you to places that you'd never otherwise go to find information. It's amazing. We don't give, Terry and I don't give through the QR code. We started giving through our bank account. So every Wednesday, a check goes to our church. Even when I'm not there today. But our check came in last Wednesday for that church. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. God is moving, PLI is responding. You're invited to join us. Last slide, please, sir. This is my contact information. You can take a picture of that as well. There are brochures. I should have brought some in here. They're in the narthex of the church. Brochures and my personal business card. I'd be happy to answer any questions. You can send an email, you can do a phone call, whatever you like to do. I'd be happy to hear from you. If I see your phone number and I don't have you in my phone, I might think you're a robocall. So I may not answer it right away, but leave a message and I'll be happy to call you back. Pastor Kieschnick, would you like to say a word about Pastoral Leadership Institute?
No, I'd like to say a word about you.
Come on up here so people can see you and hear you.
No, I'm good. aims are never achieved, they're often transcended. That's what PLI is all about. Involvement of the spouses, and my heart is really the international mission. Scott Rishi and his wife Gloria have been phenomenal gifts to the church. So thank you for your presentation, Gary. And I thank God for Gloria Day. You hosted a conference, I don't know how many times, during the early 2000s. And so thank you. Thank you for your support.
So that man and I both were born and raised in Texas. We both have the same last name, spelled the same way. We both were Lutheran school teachers for a couple of years after we graduated from two different colleges and universities. We never knew each other existed until we set foot the same day on the campus of Concordia Theological Seminary, which was then in Springfield, Illinois. I said, Kieschnick, where are you from? He said, well, I'm from Walburg, Texas. Where are you from? I said, from Houston. The first time, and we were, I was 23 years old. You were maybe 1 year old. But since that time, we have developed a remarkable relationship. This man is one of my heroes, and he's just a great, humble, gifted, profound. You say more things that are profound, John Kieschnick. You really do. I love you, brother.
It's all by the grace of God.
By the grace of God. Questions that you might have in our remaining couple of minutes. Yes, sir.
You say you teach to other denominations or no denominations. How do you get around the differences in beliefs when you do that?
The question was, we teach to different denominations or other denominations. How do we get around differences in beliefs? Well, all of these are Christian pastors. They all believe in Jesus Christ our Lord. So that's the unifying principle and concept. Our training does not go into the nitty-gritty doctrinal approaches and perspectives of our church body, which makes us Lutheran. We talk about the saving gospel of Jesus Christ, the grace of God in Jesus, and how to help these pastors and their spouses become more confident, more proficient, and more successful in doing the work that God has called each of them to do as a pastor and as a pastor's wife. So it's not a system of teaching our doctrine. But you know what? You can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. So when our Lutheran Church Missouri Synod pastors are teaching non-denominational or other denominations, we're teaching it from an LCMS perspective, from a Lutheran, grace-filled, sacramental perspective. But that's not the focus of what we do. The focus of what we do is strengthening the Christian faith and the Christian witness of those pastors and leadership of their pastors and their wives. Great question. Others? Yes, ma'am.
Well, originally I thought you started to help pastors of large congregations. Is that still kind of a prerequisite? Or, because I mean, 16,000 churches in Africa are not all being huge, right?
Thank you. I think the question was, so we initially started by training pastors to be pastors of large churches. Is that still a primary focus? Well, yes, it is, because a lot of those non-denominational or other denominational churches are huge. The Christian movement in Africa is phenomenal. I mentioned there is a Lutheran church in Africa, the Ethiopian Makana Jesus Church. It's called Makana Jesus Lutheran Church. I think they had, last time I heard, which was a couple of years ago, they had 10 million members. Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has less than 2 million members. So those churches are large churches. And a lot of their pastors have no theological training. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help those churches, help those pastors learn how to be pastors of huge churches, a whole lot larger than we have here. Yes, sir.
Do you have training in Ghana?
Do we have training in Ghana? I don't think we've been in Ghana yet. I've been to Ghana several times.
Christian nation.
Ghana is a Christian nation, you bet. So what we're doing in Africa is just responding to requests that we get from people and churches in those countries. And I don't know if Ghana is on I can't remember if that map shows Ghana or not, but we will be in Ghana sooner or later.
We have a friend that's from Ghana.
Yeah, Ghana's a great place. Okay, one more question?
How about
Yes,
Kenya?
ma'am. Excuse me?
Kenya?
Kenya. I don't know that we've been in Kenya yet. Mostly we've been in Ethiopia and Tanzania, but I'm sure Kenya's going to be on the drawing board as well. All those countries in Africa are just ripe with the gospel, and the gospel is on fire in that continent. Well, hey, thank you very much for being here and for your interest. I didn't see very many people fall asleep, so God be praised. May I pray with you before I go? Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, for these people, for this message, for this organization, for this church, this congregation, for its pastors, past and present, future. I pray that your Spirit will move mightily among us so that in prayer and in financial support, we might continue to bless the work that you have begun through this little organization. As we go our separate ways, I pray for continued blessing in the lives and hearts of these people. I don't know what's in their hearts or lives. I don't know what burdens they carry, what joys they experience, what thanksgivings are in their hearts. We have been blessed as a people. So walk with, accompany, bless, forgive, strengthen, empower. Grant these people a special measure of your grace and your peace and your joy as we serve you in everything we do and everything we have. In the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
You bet. And by the way, folks, in our email and so forth this week, I'll go ahead and I'll post links to PLI, and if you missed the QR code, I'll replicate that in our communication so you can find it easily. It's not hard. It's plileadership.org, I think, is the website, but we'll send that out so you'll have it right in front of you so you can get to it easily.
Great.
And do that.
Don't forget the brochures and the cards on the table in the narthex. Thank you.
Very good. So yeah, our